How do you feel the Switch 2 compares to the current crop of PC handhelds? Is it a Steam Deck killer? Obviously, there's various ways in which these products shouldn't be compared, right? Because, they are effectively very different market segments. The Steam Deck has been commercially successful, but, I think it's sold something like 3 to 4 million units. You'd expect the Switch 2 to be like going up into the 100 million plus. So, very different markets. However, from a technological perspective, I think the question is quite sound. Oliver, I'd be curious as to your thoughts on this one before Alex and I weigh in.
I suspect, based off of my experiences with Steam Deck, that in docked play, it should be faster than a Steam Deck. I suspect that will be the case in most titles. It should be substantially faster in similar workloads. In handheld mode, I would expect it would be somewhat less powerful, is my expectation. At least, again, similar workloads, I'd expect it would probably be a little bit less powerful there in some of those titles, at least in the same workloads. But if you're looking at well-optimized games that are maybe using some of these features on Switch 2, possibly in a way that would be a little bit better than you could get under PC there with that hardware, I could see it ultimately being a smoother experience, especially because, keep in mind, you've got VRR support, you've got 120 hertz support. Those are things you're not getting on a Steam Deck, especially on an original Steam Deck, which only goes to 60 hertz there. So I think it should ultimately, in terms of the experience that you have as an end user, it probably ultimately is comparable to that experience. I would say it's probably in the ballpark with that experience. But yeah, I would say that even if the graphical output kind of in theory might be a little bit less than a Steam Deck in terms of that portable mode capability, I'd expect that in actual games that ship on the device, that those games will be really well suited to Switch 2.
Absolutely. Alex?
Yeah, I'm going to echo every single thing he said. So thank you, Oliver. I think the difference of that being the amount of people who are buying a Steam Deck versus the people, just where you buy a Steam Deck, they're not typically found in your little store on the corner. You can go to an airport and see a Switch there being sold. I don't think I've seen a Steam Deck being sold in an airport before, right? There's all these things that just, it's just an entirely different class of product for the people who are interested in it. So I don't think the people who are interested in a Steam Deck are going to view it as a Steam Deck killer anyway. So.
Yeah, lots of thoughts about this one, and Oliver's hit the nail on the head there. The docked performance, basically they can throw a lot more power at the chip, and not quite sure how much, mind you, how much more power. There was talk of 40 watts, I think, from the dock, Oliver.
Yikes, yeah.
The thing is that dock would also have to support any peripherals that are plugged into it via USB. Yeah. It would need to support... that's quite a big thing, to be honest. You just don't quite know how much of that 40 watts is going to the Switch 2
and charging at the same time, of course.
And charging, yes, that's true, of course, as well. So, power budget of a Steam Deck, I've seen it take up to like 28 watts running like God of War on it, which is probably going to be quite comparable, possibly slightly below what the Switch 2 is going to be taking in terms of power there. The processor is obviously of a completely different architecture. And of course, the clock speeds are quite different. The Steam Deck sort of tops out, I think, at 1.6 gigahertz on the GPU. The CPU is like, much, much faster. The clocks are lower on the Switch 2, but I suspect that the chip itself is kind of going to be broadly wider. Certainly got more CPU cores. The GPU, not sure how comparable that is. It's going to be interesting to kind of maybe do a settings match between the two on certain games and to see how well they perform. And then we get into the issue of mobile performance, where, again, the Steam Deck will be running at up to 28 watts. The Switch 2 pretty much seems to have a 10-watt limit, bearing in mind they're talking about a minimum of 2 hours battery life on a 20-watt-hour battery. So, yes, I mean, very different things. Obviously, the Switch 2 has the benefit of having specific curation from the developers, which has paid off in spades on the original Switch. So, yeah, I mean, how does it compare? Is it a Steam Deck killer? To be decided, I think. But in docked play, we're seeing some good things there, I'd say. Mobile, haven't seen enough. I think we've seen a clip of Cyberpunk, and that's kind of about it, possibly. Even then, we're not sure if it's mobile or footage or not. But yes, the mobile play is certainly the big question mark for me. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that all pans out for sure. The current crop of PC handhelds, though, goes way beyond the Steam Deck. We've got stuff like ROG Ally, that class of performance. We've now got Z2 Extreme coming along, which is going to, Strix Point. These handhelds are even more powerful, significantly more powerful than the Steam Deck. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be possibly quite an interesting group test to do once we've actually got hands-on with the hardware. Can we do like broadly equivalent settings matches to switch to? Can we then run those third-party games on Steam Deck and ROG Ally, whatever the new Ally is, A&EO3, that kind of thing? Interesting stuff, and obviously going back again to Star Wars Outlaws. That's going to be fascinating, right? I'm just
excited.
Kind of my mind sort of boggled at the concept of a 560 megahertz GPU running that in a mobile form factor at 10 watts. Total system power consumption doing Star Wars Outlaws. Man, that's going to be awesome.